has to go in completely. Or no. Yes, it's working. Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Bihare Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Bihare Gopi Jana Ballava Giribharadhare Gopi Jana Ballava Giribharadhare Yashodanandana Raja Janaranjana Yashodanandana Raja Janaranjana Yamunatira Vanachare Yamunatira Vanachare Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Bihare Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Bihare Gopi Jana Ballava Giribharadhare Gopi Jana Ballava Giribharadhare Yashodanandana Raja Janaranjana Yashodanandana Raja Janaranjana Yamunatira Vanachare Yamunatira Vanachare Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Bihare Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Bihare Jai Prabhupada Jai Prabhupada Prabhupada Jai Prabhupada Jai Prabhupada, Jai Prabhupada, Prabhupada, Jai Prabhupada. Jai Jai Prabhupada, 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 Prabhupada. Jai Jai Prabhupada, 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 Prabhupada. Jai Srimad Paramahansa Parivrajacharyas Srimad His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki, ISKCON's founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada Ki, Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam Ki, Shri Radha Radhanath Ki, Shri Giri Govardhan Ki, Sankirtan Yagya Ki, Shri Caitanya Mahaprabhu Ki, Go Premanande. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to Sri Guru and Sri Gauranga. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. So it's verse 10. Yes, okay. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Yes, so today we're reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 4, Chapter 23, Maharaj Prithu's Going Back Home, verse 10. Bhagavad 11. Oh, sorry. 11. You're 11. Okay. Verse 11, excuse me. Tasyanaya Bhagavata Parikarma Shuddha Sattvatmanas Tad Anusamsmarananupurtya Jnanam Viraktimad Abun Nishitena Yena Chicheda Samshaya Padam Nija Jiva Kosham. Tasya Naya Bhagavata Parikarma Shuddha Sattvatmanas Tadanusam Smarananupurtya Jnanam Virakti Madabun Nishitena Yena Chit-cheta samshayapadam nija jiva kosham. Tasya naya bhagavata parikarma shuddha. Sattvatmanas tadanu samsmarananu portya. Jnanam virakti madabhu nishitena yena. Chit-cheta samshayapadam nija jiva kasham. Excuse me. Tasyan haya bhagavata parikarma shuddha. Sattvatmanas tadanu samsmarananu portya. Jnanam virakti madabhu nishitena yena. Chit-cheta samshayapadam nija jiva kosham. Mother Jess. Tasya, his, anaya, by this, Bhagavata, of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, parikarma, activities in devotional service, shuddha, pure, transcendental, sattva, existence, atmana, of the mind, tat, of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, anusamsmarana, constantly remembering, anupurtya, being perfectly done, jnanam, knowledge, virakti, non-attachment, mat, possessing, abut, became manifested, nishitena, by sharpened activities, yena, by which, chicheda, become separated, samshaya padam, position of doubtfulness, nija, own, jivakosham, encagement of the living entity. Translation: by regularly discharging devotional service, Prithu Maharaj became transcendental in mind and could therefore constantly think of the lotus feet of the Lord. Because of this, he became completely detached and attained perfect knowledge by which he could transcend all doubt. Thus he was freed from the clutches of false ego and the material conception of life. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. In the Narada Pancharatra, devotional service to the Lord is likened unto a queen. When a queen gives an audience, many maidservants follow her. The maidservants of devotional service are material opulence, liberation, and mystic powers. The karamis are very much attached to material enjoyment. The jnanis are very anxious to become freed from material clutches, and the yogis are very fond of attaining the 8 kinds of mystic perfection. From the Narada Pancharatra, we understand that if one attains the stage of pure devotional service, he also attains all the opulences derived from fruitive activities, empiric philosophical speculation, and mystic yogic practice. Srila Bilvamangal Thakur therefore prayed in his Krishna Karnamrita, "My dear Lord, if I have unflinching devotion to you, you become manifest before me personally, and the results of fruitive activity and empiric philosophical speculation, namely religion, economic development, sense gratification, and liberation, become like personal attendants and remain standing before me as if awaiting my order." The idea here is that the jnanis, by culture of Brahma Vidya, spiritual knowledge, struggle very hard to get out of the clutches of material nature. But a devotee, by dint of his advancement in devotional service, automatically becomes detached from his material body. When the devotee's spiritual body begins to manifest, he actually enters into his activities in transcendental life. At present, we have contacted a material body, material mind, and material intelligence. But when we become free from these material conditions, our spiritual body, spiritual mind, and spiritual intelligence become manifest. In that transcendental state, a devotee attains all the benefits of karma, jnana, and yoga. Although he never engages in fruitive activities or empiric speculation to attain mystic powers, automatically mystic powers appear in his service. A devotee does not want any kind of material opulence, but such opulence appears before him automatically. He does not have to endeavor for it. Because of his devotional service, he automatically becomes Brahma-bhuta, as described in Srimad Bhagavatam, 4th Canto, Chapter 30, verse 20. As stated before, this is confirmed in Bhagavad Gita, Chapter 14, verse 26. Mam chayo vyabhicharena bhakti yogena sevate sagunan samatityaitan brahma bhuyaya kalpate. Which means, one who's engaged in full devotional service, unfailing in all circumstances, at once transcends the modes of material nature and thus comes to the level of Brahman. Because of his regular discharge of devotional service, a devotee attains the transcendental stage of life. Since his mind is transcendently situated, he cannot think of anything but the lotus feet of the Lord. This is the meaning of the word samsmarana anupurtya. By constantly thinking of the lotus feet of the Lord, the devotee immediately becomes situated in Shuddha Sattva. Shuddha Sattva refers to that platform which is above the modes of material nature, including the mode of goodness. In the material world, the mode of goodness is considered to be representative of the highest perfection. But one has to transcend this mode and come to the stage of Shuddha Sattva, or pure goodness, where the three qualities of material nature cannot act. Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur gives the following example. If one has strong digestive power, after eating, he automatically lights a fire within his stomach to digest everything and does not need to take medicine to aid his digestion. Similarly, the fire of devotional service is so strong that a devotee does not need to act separately to attain perfect knowledge or detachment from material attractions. A jnani may become detached from material attractions by prolonged discussions on subjects of knowledge, and may in this way finally come to the Brahma-bhuta stage. But a devotee does not have to undergo so much trouble. Shri Radha Radhanath Shri Giri Govardhan Shri Caitanya Mahaprabhu Ki Jai. Yes, by virtue of his devotional service, he attains the Brahma-bhuta, 430-20 stage, without a doubt. The yogis and jnanis are always doubtful about their constitutional position. Therefore, they mistakenly think of becoming one with the Supreme. However, a devotee's relationship with the Supreme becomes manifest beyond all doubt, and he immediately understands that his position is that of eternal servant of the Lord. Jnanis and yogis without devotion may think themselves liberated, but actually their intelligence is not as pure as that of a devotee. In other words, the jnanis and yogis cannot become factually liberated unless they become elevated to the position of devotees. Arurya krichrena parampadam tata patanchido narjita yujmad angrayaha. That's part of Srimad Bhagavatam 10.2.32. The jnani and yogis may rise to the highest position, Brahman realization, but because of their lack of devotion unto the lotus feet of the Lord, they again fall down into material nature. Therefore, jnana and yoga should not be accepted as the real processes for liberation. By discharging devotional service, Maharaj Prithu automatically transcended all these positions. Since Maharaj Prithu was a Shaktivesh incarnation of the Supreme Lord, he did not have to act in any way to attain liberation. He came from the Vaikuntha world, or spiritual sky, in order to execute the will of the Supreme Lord on earth. Consequently, he was to return home back to Godhead without having to execute jnana, yoga, or karma. Although Prithu Maharaj was eternally a pure devotee of the Lord, he nonetheless adopted the process of devotional service in order to teach the people in general the proper process for executing the duties of life and ultimately returning home back to Godhead. Tasyanaya Bhagavata Parikarma Shuddha Satvatmanas Tadanu Samsparananu Purtya Jnanam Virakti Madabun Nishitena Yena Chicheda Samshaya Padam Nija Jiva Kosham. By regularly discharging devotional service, Prithu Maharaj became transcendental in mind and could therefore constantly think of the lotus feet of the Lord. Because of this, he became completely detached and attained perfect knowledge by which he could transcend all doubt. Thus he was freed from the clutches of false ego and the material conception of life. Nama Om Vishnupadaya Krishna Prestaya Bhutale Shrimati Bhaktivedanta Swami Niti Namane Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharne Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarne Vanchakalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Evacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Shri Krishna Caitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadha Shivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Yes, so continuing the description of Prithu Maharaj, how he step by step developed, first of all, some austerities were then, but it all developed into devotional service and then came to the level of pure, completely pure devotional service. And because he was situated in that state of completely pure devotional service, then all other facilities which can be obtained by other processes, they all just came to him without him having to make any separate endeavor. Krishna makes that point. Lord Krishna makes that point in Bhagavad Gita in chapter, 14? What is it? 15. Yes, right, okay, 15, sorry. Is it 15? Anyway, Lord Krishna makes it's chapter 11. Sorry about that. Chapter 11, verse 55. Or 54. Anyway, one of these verses, the Lord makes the point that by developing pure devotional service, one achieves whatever can be achieved by other processes. It's just so, the process of devotional service is just so unlimited, one could say. It's just unlimited and able to give everything, completely everything. So this point is being discussed here in this chapter, in this purport, in some detail. Prabhupada, first of all, describes how a devotee achieves opulence, which is normally achieved through fruit of activity, karmic activity, the karmis, then liberation, which is the aspiration, at least, of the jnanis, the impersonalists, and then the devotees also achieve, on the very advanced level, mystical powers, which the yogis, particularly means the Ashtanga yogis, they're very fond of attaining. Yes, so, and Prabhupada gives the example of devotional service being likened unto a queen, that when a queen comes, when a queen gives audience, when she appears in front of the people, maidservants follow her. Many maidservants. And the maidservants of devotional service are material opulence, liberation, and mystical powers. There's one little pastime of Srila Prabhupada's in which some gentleman somewhere in India, perhaps in Mayapur, but somewhere in India, asks Prabhupada, "Can you perform miracles?" And Srila Prabhupada turned to, there was a group of his disciples there, turned to the disciples and indicated them, and Srila Prabhupada said, "These are my miracles." Because previously they were absorbed in just material existence, even degraded forms of material existence. But now look at them, they've become completely pure, maintaining standards of no sinful activity, no meat, fish or eggs, onions or garlic, no intoxication, not even tea or coffee, no illicit sex life, and no gambling, or even just mental speculations about what is life. That's those sorts of things. So they've become completely free from those things. But otherwise, people may struggle greatly to become detached, in that particular case at least, to become detached from this material world, and for that matter, they actually may not be able to. In most cases, they They're not able to become detached from this world. Maybe a little bit here and there, but not like complete virakti. Virakti means like absolute detachment. In fact, this term is used. We see it if we look in the 18th chapter of Nectar of Devotion. There's the list of the 9 main symptoms of bhava, of ecstasy. And one of them, the Sanskrit term, which is used, is virakti, which means just absolute detachment, not just to some degree or something like that, absolute detachment. So these people they may try for these things, the non-devotees. They may try for these things, but usually they cannot achieve them, certainly not completely, and often just to some small degree. Like there's one famous spiritual organization which is based on one sort of yogi fellow who was quite detached. But now the current day followers, they don't even really try for that. They don't really try for that. And rather they do charitable work and these types of mode of goodness activities, but they're still on the material platform. Yes, so it's not easy. It's not easy to develop these things. So anyway, the devotees, not necessarily that they just become opulent. Otherwise, we'd have a lot of very wealthy devotees sitting here in the temple room right now. Are you wealthy? I mean, like really wealthy. Could you buy a couple of Rolls Royces if you wanted to? Or a couple of palaces or something? I think I mentioned the other day, I did, yeah, that a person in certain circles of, like the ultra wealthy, a person is not considered wealthy if he or she can still know how much they have. Yeah. If they still know, they can do a calculation somehow of different assets and this and that, and know, I have X amount of money or things, of assets, of opulences. They're not considered wealthy. Yeah. But when someone, because usually these investments are just increasing on a daily basis, so a person who's really wealthy is a person who cannot calculate how much he has, because it already increased from when he did the previous calculation. Yes, but it may happen, it can happen, and it does happen sometimes, that devotees, pure devotees, become extremely wealthy. Like Srila Prabhupada at the time of his leaving this world, he had 108 temples, and many of them, some of them were very substantial properties, which actually the ISKCON movement owned. They actually owned, not just renting or something like that. So in this way, Srila Prabhupada, through preaching Krishna consciousness, pure devotional service, he actually became wealthy. And liberation, Prabhupada was just so detached from everything. I remember the last time I saw Srila Prabhupada, 1977, when he had just visited England for some days or maybe a week or something like that, and was going back to India, to Vrindavan, and just a matter of a couple of few weeks later, he left this world. I remember seeing Srila Prabhupada. Well, we rented, we didn't buy, but we rented a Rolls Royce because Prabhupada, as the pure representative of the Lord, he certainly deserved the best. And so there we were at the airport, but there was a delay, and Prabhupada didn't go in initially, he waited. But because he was elderly and for whatever reasons, they let him stay in the car at the entrance to the terminal, which they normally did not allow. You'd have to go and park in a car park. So they let him remain in the car, in this Rolls Royce. So Prabhupada was sitting in the back seats, and he was sitting, none of you are demonstrating it, but he was sitting cross-legged, but with one knee up and leaning his elbow, leaning on his knee. And it was such a casual position for a person in a, as motor cars go, an extremely opulent motor car. Yeah, it was very much sort of like, don't care, and I'll just sit the way I want to sit. Because you probably know, and actually we had the experience once in Bhaktivedanta Manor, Prabhupada chanted japa with the devotees in the temple room, and one of the devotees, his name is Jagat Bandhu Das, Jamaican person, devotee. He was sitting like that, or in one way or another. And Prabhupada famously said, sit properly. In other words, it's not really good enough. It's not really good enough to sit like that. But Prabhupada was himself sitting like that in the back of the Rolls Royce, like, who cares sort of thing. Because he was liberated from such considerations. And then mystical powers, we just mentioned that example, and it's a very good example, actually. It may sound just like being humorous, something like that, but actually it's a very good example, because for people, any people, even people who've been brought up in sattvic types of environments, but it's very difficult for them to maintain the four regulative principles, like very nicely and really up to the proper standard. I remember we were in, I forget the name of the place actually, Mehrana, the birthplace of Mother Yashoda, not far from Nandagram. We were there, and there's a temple there, and moderate size, not big, but fairly substantial, and a nice little altar for Mother Yashoda. And there was one elderly devotee who was like in charge, and he was extremely nice. And he asked us, he said, I'm going to milk the cow. They had a cow. I'm going to milk the cow. Would you like some milk? So we said, yeah, thank you. So he milked the cow, but you know what he did? He put tea in the milk. And then he handed us this tea, like milk tea, because he just didn't know. We had to explain to him, in extremely broken Hindi, that we don't drink tea. And he got the message. He was a little surprised. Oh, really? But then, he was so nice. He said, all right, no problem. I'll milk the cow again, and you can just have milk. So we did. And the cow gave milk again, like 15 minutes after being milked, and we had some hot milk. Yes, so if it's not uncommon that even people who are actually living very pious lives and in many ways quite renounced ways, but it's not uncommon for them to still maintain, even unknowingly, some bad habits. Not just bad habits, but you could actually say sinful activities. At least, onions and garlic, that's so common. And particularly garlic is both of them, they're really sinful actually. So anyway, people, if they're trying to become opulent, trying to become detached, and what to speak of trying to develop mystical powers, they have to work hard at those particular things. It's not that they just manifest like that. Prabhupada told the story about mystical powers, how the one young man who went from some village somewhere in India, but he went somewhere where there was a school for learning mystical powers. I've heard it said that there are still a few of those existing. Never seen one, but that's what I've heard said. Anyway, he went there and he learned some mystical powers and he came back to the village. And his idea actually was to use the mystical powers to make money, because people become impressed and they may give money. So he came back and the village gathered and he spoke to the people and he said, "How much will you give me if I walk across the river, if I walk on the water across the river? How much will you give me?" And everyone was sort of, walk on the water? They're quite amazed. But one man immediately said, "I will give you 2 paisa. And the young man said, What 2 paisa? Walking on water, that's worth a lot more than 2 paisa. And the person said, "Well, for 2 paisa, I can get a ticket on a boat and go across the river, and I won't even get my feet wet. So I'll give you 2 paisa." Prabhupada told that story. And also Prabhupada mentioned, Prabhupada was asked, can you walk on water? He was asked specifically. And Prabhupada said, if I walked on water, I would attract people who want to walk on water. But I want to attract people who are interested in developing devotional service and pure devotional service. So that is what I do. Yes, so like this. And Prabhupada makes the very extraordinary point. This is a substantial purport. And it would take a while to cover everything adequately, really. But at the end of this first paragraph, Prabhupada makes the point that the jnanis, by culture of Brahma Vidya, spiritual knowledge, struggle very hard to get out of the clutches of material nature, but a devotee, by dint of his advancement in devotional service, automatically becomes detached from his material body. And then when the devotee's spiritual body begins to manifest, he actually enters into his activities in transcendental life. Yeah, well, of course it's important, Prabhupada says, when the devotee's spiritual body begins to manifest, not like when it is manifest. Because like everything in Krishna consciousness, the manifestation of the spiritual body is it happens slowly. It's not just like, it's very rare at least that just suddenly the spiritual body is there, whereas a moment ago it just wasn't there. The only case where we read where it happened just like that was with Narada Muni in his previous lifetime as the son of the maidservant, but then he became a great devotee as he became older in that same lifetime, but he had not come to perfection quite yet. But then, just when he passed away, when the soul just left the body, just like that, then the Bhagavatam says his spiritual body just manifested on the spot. It says just like lightning and illumination occur simultaneously. But otherwise it's step by step. And Prabhupada in Nectar of Devotion gives the example of the development of a coconut. Coconut, is green, but then as some time goes on, it becomes brown, and the green falls away, it becomes brown and sort of kind of like furry or something. But when it becomes totally mature, then the flesh or whatever you'd call it inside, as it dries, that flesh, because it shrinks because the water is evaporating, so it shrinks, and then it finally, it just detaches itself completely, physically, from the shell. And so Prabhupada says that, therefore, when it reaches that state, you can shake the coconut and you'll hear it rattling inside. So that's the very advanced stage, because the flesh, so to speak, inside, in that example, is being used to represent the spiritual body. But it's not that it just dries like that and then just separates like that, and then it rattles just on the spot. It takes time, some time. So similarly, for devotees, as soon as one starts to at least seriously engage in devotional service, then that process begins of the manifestation of the spiritual body. It begins. Of course, it may initially be unnoticeable, meaning compared to when you can shake the coconut and it rattles, but it is happening. It's not that it's not happening. When the devotees, even the neophyte devotees, are fully engaged, seriously engaged in full devotional service. Yes. So, therefore, Prabhupada says, when the devotee's spiritual body begins to manifest, he actually enters into his activities in transcendental life. So, in other words, any committed devotee who's regularly discharging devotional service is certainly engaged in activities in transcendental life. It's not just mundane activity. It's definitely transcendental, spiritual activity, devotional service to the Lord. Yes, so anyway, because of the devotee's regular discharge of devotional service, the devotee comes to the transcendental stage. Transcendental meaning actually like fully transcendental. And on that level, the devotee finds he or she cannot think of anything but the lotus feet of the Lord. Even they may try, not that they would, but even if they did try to think of material things, the mind would not let them. The mind would not let them, because the mind, sometimes we say the mind has a mind of its own, and the fact is that the mind means the subtle body, and we are not the subtle body any more than we are the gross body of flesh and blood. So we're not the mental body, the subtle body, any more than we are these material gross bodies. So the spiritualized subtle body then is an identity or entity in and of itself. And just like even through sickness or something, one can lose control of the gross body, like someone who gets Parkinson's, or, just if you get a bad cold, Parkinson's, you can't control the shaking of the body. It's just not possible. And when someone has a bad cold, they just cough and they can't stop. Because the body is just doing it, because the body is in that condition. So similarly, the devotee who has come to the transcendental stage, advanced stage of Krishna consciousness, since his mind is transcendentally situated, he cannot think of anything but the lotus feet of the Lord. And then is situated in Shuddha Sattva. So like this, points like these are made here, and probably gives interesting example, which probably we can relate to. If you have strong digestive power, then you can just eat. Not just anything, but you can eat anything within our diet, and just it's digested. No problem. You don't get an upset stomach or any sort of discomfort, and what to speak of some real disturbance in the digestive system. So similarly, the devotional service, so that digestive power just burns up all of the food. So similarly, the fire of devotional service is so strong that the devotee doesn't need to make separate efforts to acquire opulence, if that's the will of the Lord, or certainly not detachment like this. Even mystical powers may come without making any separate effort, because Krishna is the Supreme Lord, and if he feels his devotee needs something to execute his or her devotional service, if it's really important enough, Krishna will give it. And in this way, the devotee's relationship with the Lord becomes manifest beyond all doubt. Beyond all doubt. I read actually quite some, maybe 10, before COVID, quite some time ago, about, with all due respect, the Archbishop of Canterbury of the time, means the head of the Church of England. And he was expressing how sometimes he has doubts. And he said, sometimes I don't know if I believe in God. And he's the head of the Anglican Church. So it's not really a complete process. And because it's not a complete process, then the realization and experience which comes is also not complete. But for the devotees, the relationship with the Supreme becomes manifest beyond all doubt. And he understands his position as being the eternal servant of the Lord. So these are some of the points made here about Maharaj Prithu and what he achieved and experienced in his gradual process towards perfection and then coming to perfection. Hare Krishna. Any comments or questions? Jai Sachinandan Prabhu.
Thank you so much for that enlightening class. There's so many points there to start.
So many points.
Yeah, I like the analogy of the maid servants. It's such a wonderful analogy that. And I was thinking of this Shishastikam of Lord Chaitanya's Na Dhanam, Na Janam, Na Sundarim, Kavitam Va Jagadishai, Mama Janmani, Janmishwari, Bhavatad Bhakat.
Right.
Saying, I do not want all things like wealth, beautiful woman, even the thought, liberation, and Modi wants to serve lifetime after lifetime of service to the Lord. So this is good. Then you spoke about the mystic powers of yogis. And Prabhupada, I think in the Science of Self-Realization, he mentions the Astasiddhis, and he downplayed, he says whatever the yogis, the scientists have emulated them. They created ships that can float on water, planes that can fly, rockets that can go to other planets. He says, it's no big deal.
He also mentioned they can penetrate through mountains.
Yes.
Whereas these people, what an endeavor and what cost to make a tunnel through a mountain.
Yes.
Very good, thank you.
Then the other analogy of, I'm trying to think where I read that, the caterpillar, it dreams of becoming a butterfly. Is that, I don't know if it was in Bhagavad Gita. I think that Prabhupada uses that.
Yes, I was just reading yesterday or the day before about what is it? Is it the moth?
The moth.
Who is caught by the bee and he just thinks about, like caught in a bee's trap. He just thinks of the bee, in a nasty way, and becomes a bee. Yeah, and the moth becomes a butterfly. Oh no, the
caterpillar.
Whatever, cocoon. The worm, the silkworm. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Srila Prabhupada ki jai.